Welcome to the Rosie Rose podcast. Today, I'm excited to introduce a special guest, Sorany, born in Long Beach, California, to Cambodian parents who survived the killing fields. She made the courageous decision to move back to Cambodia in August 2021, right in the middle of the pandemic. As a talented writer and a content creator, she captures the beauty and essence of Cambodia through her Instagram reels, sharing both her personal journey and the rich history of Cambodia with her followers. In addition to her creative work, Sorany has started a small business reselling Buddha pendants, and she juggled various writing gigs and media projects. Her journey of living and thriving in beyond the intergenerational trauma is truly inspiring. Today, we'll dive in her experience in living in Cambodia, her creative work, and her entrepreneur ventures. Please join me in welcoming Sorany to the podcast. Hi.
Hi, Rosie. Thank you so much. I just wanted to start off by saying thank you for making space and time for me to do this. I'm really excited to get to know you more and also talk a little bit about my journey as well.
Yes. So
Thank you.
I've been following you for I don't know how long. Back when shoot, I don't know. It was 5, 6, 7 years.
It's been a while.
It's
It's been
been
a
a
while. We've been
while
following
because
each other.
I
Yeah,
remember you
for
from
sure.
like living in Long Beach, uh,
Yeah.
and then you living off in the boat.
Yes.
Yeah, and
Good
then
times.
and then and then next thing you know, you're in Cambodia.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, it's been a journey for sure.
yeah, it's amazing to see your journey and your process and how you shared what you overcome because life is not easy, you know?
It's not. It's not.
Yeah, and I love how like raw and vulnerable of things you shared with us. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, so can you tell us a little bit about you born in Long Beach, but you were raised in Fresno?
Yes, so I was born in the Paramount Long Beach area. And then it was the 80s, so it was like it was kind of a rocky time in Long Beach during that time period, especially for Cambodian refugees. So my parents decided that they needed to get away from that area. There's a lot of crime and gang violence and things like that. So the next best thing, my dad decided to move up to Fresno, California. So Fresno has, I consider Fresno my hometown, even though I was born in Long Beach. I claim both, obviously, but Fresno is where I grew up. And in my early 20s, I made my way out to the central coast of California. That was like the first, San Luis Obispo was really the first place that I got away to, like on my own as an adult. And then I made my way down south to Southern California and started, making friends there. So yeah. Um, I mean, where do I begin? There's so much.
Yeah, so you grew up in Fresno. Did you grow up in like in a Cambodian neighborhood?
I did not actually. This is really interesting because looking back, when you're growing up as like a young kid, you think that like your world is the same as everyone else's. So like what I experienced, I'm like, so we were my parents, my dad specifically, like made sure that we were not amongst like any bad influences. So for him, that meant not being around alcohol, gambling, things like that. So we were always kind of like tucked away in some apartment or little like rental home or something, but away from other Cambodians. The only time we were near other Khmer people were in the Khmer school that my dad co-founded, or when we went to, cultural functions at Voat during George Nam and things like that. So I would say it was a very controlled environment. But looking back, I definitely see how it shaped like my perspective of things. But yeah, so I grew up in Fresno, among other Cambodians, but it was like a very like scheduled time if
Yeah.
you
So you
consider it that
mentioned your
way.
dad was a Cambodian, founded a Cambodian school?
Yes, so it was
Khmer, like
called
Khmer school, like Saw Khmer?
yes,
Oh,
so Slavian is all Khmer Fresno
mhm.
here. It was called Keep. the acronym KEEP, Khmer Emerging Education Program, and it was a after school program held on Thursdays and Fridays after school from 4:30 to 6:30. And I believe at its peak we had over like 300 Khmer students. So a lot of the people that a lot of the Khmer kids that I grew up with were from that era, were from that time. And I'm one of the I consider myself one of the very lucky few Khmer Americans of our generation that know how to read um, and write and comprehend Khmer language.
No
Um,
way.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm a little rusty still, but I'm so thankful because being in Cambodia now, or having moved to Cambodia in 2021, it's really allowed me to like appreciate the language more. Because as a
Yeah.
kid, you're like Korean, like on Thursday and Friday, the Tonya, young Khmer, and you just like want to be
Yes.
with your friends and like playing and stuff, and you don't really understand, you don't grasp the gravity of like how
Yeah.
important it is until much later in life, and you're like, I get it now. Like I
Yeah.
appreciate it.
Yeah. And that
Yeah.
brought me a story because I grew up in Modesto. So,
Mhm.
um,
Not
like,
too far.
yeah, not too far. So in the
Yeah.
early 90s, so where I grew up at, I grew like a couple blocks away from Paradise Apartment and by the
Okay.
Watt. If you're around that area, you know where what Paradise is. But I remember in the early 90s, I was probably still in elementary school and it was summertime and they had a Saw Khmer school at the Watt. And the first time I went, I seen somebody's dad or somebody's foo like
Hmm.
hit, like a very thin tree branch. The kid like had wrong answer or something. It must be his own like
Parent
kid or
or
something. Yeah, like some
yeah.
kid he knew. He like whipped
Oh,
his hand. So when I seen that, I was like, oh hell no, I got scared.
yeah. Yeah.
So so the neighborhood kids will walk by and be like, and call me, like ask where's my mom, because they were trying
Hmm.
to find me to take me to the Cambodian school. And I would
Yeah.
hide in the backyard because I didn't want to go because I was scared. I didn't want to
Yeah.
get hit.
As you should be. That would be kind of scary for a kid.
Yeah.
How old were
Yeah.
you? Do you remember?
I probably like 9 or 10. I was still, yeah, it was still young, but we end
Yeah.
up learning a song Khmer from Tommy's dad, the neighborhood Cambodian, like one of the dads in the neighborhood. So he
Yeah.
taught all the kids in the neighborhood saw Khmer. So I'm like, okay, ga ka go konyo,
Yeah.
da ta something something, and a.
Yeah.
That's all
Very
I know.
good. No, that's awesome that you remember. That's
Yeah.
so good.
Yeah. So can you tell us about like your decision to move to Cambodia in August 2021 during the
Mhm.
pandemic, and what made you what motivated you to make such a bold move?
Oh man, what didn't inspire that decision? Like stemming from um my education with Sorany and Asal Khmer and like my dad's, cultural and like educational lessons and just learning about Cambodia in a sense that and going back to like just me appreciating this much later in life. At the time, when we were young, we learned about uh Samayapod and Kamaiga in a way that was factual. Like it wasn't through the eyes of trauma. And I really want to be careful with the language that I'm using because this is important to me personally, and I want to be careful with this. But the way I learned about the killing fields and Khmer Rouge and Pol Pot was in a classroom and from my dad. And it was taught to us in a way that's like, this is what happened. This is why Khmer are in America and other parts of the world. This is what happened in the 70s and 80s. And it was done in a way that like it wasn't a scary thing. I could read about it, I could sit down and we could talk about it and ask questions. And it wasn't a subject that was taboo. It wasn't a subject that was like brushed under the rug. And so because I was able to reconcile all of these really, really hard and tough, um, you know, generational experiences, uh, from my own family and learning about it through, you know, books and lessons, I was able to reconcile all this really tough stuff at a much earlier age. Um, and so as I got older, I because I was exposed to Khmer culture in a way that like made me so proud, you know, uh Khmer language, history, culture, the dance, the food, of course. And I learned about it in a way that was like when I would go to American school, you know, Monday through Friday, I would be like, yeah, I'm Khmer. Like it was a normal thing. It just um I was proud to say it. You know, and I'm still, it's the first thing I say. Yes, it's not the only interesting thing about me, but there's no hesitation. And so because I always had that, for me, it was never an issue of like being scared of going to Cambodia. Does that make sense? Like I always looked forward to it. And my whole life was shaped like, yes, you are American, you're a US citizen, you were born here, but you are Khmer, you know? And when I look in the mirror, my hair is brown, or my skin is brown, my hair is black, I have darker features. You know, I don't look like what's being shown in the media at that time. Um, it's you always saw like a certain representation on TV and in the media, and like you grow up knowing you're different, but I was never ashamed. And so growing up, I was like, I always saw Cambodia as kind of like I compare it to like Camelot, like this amazing, beautiful place that like I can't wait to get to. You know, it was never something that I shied away from. I was never scared about it. And so growing up, it was always my dream to go. When I was 12, my parents got divorced. Um, and then when I was 16, I spent 3 months in Cambodia in Sorany with my dad. And I think that trip alone really shaped um, and really solidified my desire and dream to make living in Cambodia a goal. I think it was that trip. Like everything, like Khmer school and like learning about Cambodia and all this stuff and being proud to be Khmer. And then that trip when I was 16, I was looking around, I was like, and at that time in the year 2000, Cambodia was still kind of the Wild West.
No way. Yeah.
Yeah, it was dangerous. There was not, like compared to now, like back then in 2000, there were no high rises, there were no nice condos. It was not luxury whatsoever. It was still a country grappling with the aftermath of, you know, what happened during the genocide. And I remember during that trip, I was like, yeah, my family, you know, growing up in America, we don't have much, but compared to how people were living in Cambodia, I was like, I'm so lucky. You know, I'm so lucky. And at one point, I was like, I am such an ungrateful kid. And like in the sense that like I should appreciate what my parents did more. I should appreciate what I have. I have a free education. I have, you know, all these things that I have access to. By American standards, we were poor. But by Cambodian standards, we had plenty, you know, and I really like having that that big of a comparison when you're that young. Um, it really molded me, and it really got me to always be able to like ground myself and bring me back to a place where I was like, yes, you don't have much, but what you have is more than enough. And so I always kept that. But going back to your question, sorry, that was like very
No,
long-winded.
you're
But
good.
going back to your question about why I made such a bold move, because of all those things, I always had it in my heart um to live and travel and maybe work in Cambodia. It was always a dream to experience Cambodia for myself. Like, yes, going with my dad was amazing and beautiful, but you're a teenager and you have to be with your parent all the time. You don't have the freedom to like go out and explore. And I always had that feeling. In Khmer we say like in Khmer there's this word called nisai. And it's nisai, essentially it's like not destiny, but you have a calling. Like you have, it's a dream, it's a calling, it's a pull. And I always felt that spiritual pull to Cambodia. Um, and throughout my teens, like since that visit when I was 16 years old, in 2000, and then all the years after that, very tumultuous, like late teen years, early 20s, all that stuff. And I don't want to say I ignored that pull, but it was always there. It was always like a very present feeling in my mind, in my spirit. It was always there.
Yeah.
Um, I just didn't know how it was going to materialize. I really didn't.
Yeah.
Like,
And sorry.
no,
but
it's okay.
so what you said about how you just had this pull, this calling, and I feel
Mhm.
like all of us, we all have this pull, this calling within our heart. And I feel like our heart is our campus, our compass. And
Yeah, for sure.
you listen to your heart. You trust it like this is the direction I need to go. And
It took
it's
a while though. Yes. Yeah.
yeah, and then you eventually followed your path, your heart, and this and led you to where you are right now.
Yeah, it took I'll admit it took a couple tries. Um the trip in 2000 was when I was 16. That was with my dad. And then the next trip I would take would be 2017. It was for a couple months from like September to December. That was when um I was dating someone there actually, and I also um worked for Clappy Hands record label, which is Cambodia's first hip hop record label and alternative music label in Cambodia. So that was um that was really fun. But it was, I think, the 2017 trip was the first time that I was like, let me see if I could do this, you know? And a lot of things didn't work out, but I'm grateful for that experience because it allowed me to be in a space where I was able to make my own decisions and see if I could really take on living in Cambodia. And then the third trip to Cambodia and the second time I went on my own um, as an adult was 2019 in March. And there was so much going on at the time. There was like the Cambodia Film Festival, there was like block parties going on, there were campaigns, there was movie and music shoots. There was a lot of stuff going on at the time. There was a ton of stuff that I was attending. So again, like with going through all those experiences and making new friends and meeting other Khmer diaspora like me, but from France and Canada and Australia and all these different places, I was like, oh, there's other people like me, you know? So it was really cool. And it just, there was all these like additional layers happening. Like, yeah, I can have friends here. I can, there would be, um, a system, like an ecosystem of friends that I could reach out to and like connect with. That wasn't my only reason for going, but it gives you comfort to know that there are other people that have similar experiences and have a similar desire and goals to be in Cambodia as well. And then after 2019, 2020 was pandemic,
Mhm.
of course, so everything shut down. And then at the end of 2020 and the beginning of 2021, I was like, it is now or never. Oh, let me go back to like when I was living on the boat.
Was that
Um,
2019? 20
20, shoot. Now I can't remember. It's been a while. 2020, I think. I think towards the end of 2020,
okay.
um, or was it 2019? 2019 or 2020. Sorry, I'm like losing my timeline. But
Yeah, it's okay.
so when I was on the boat, I was living with a friend and her family for a little bit, and they provided me like space to stay for a while. And at the time, like, to be fully transparent, I was very depressed. I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't have a lot of direction. I was working odd jobs, and it's that point in your adult life where you're like, I don't know what I'm doing. I'm not in school. I'm not married. I don't really have any huge responsibilities besides take care of myself. So I was really at a crossroads for like a while, actually, trying to figure out what I wanted to do. And there was just nothing that gave me a spark, there wasn't a lot of things that made me happy. And I was just trying to like figure my life out.
What
And
kept what kept you going? Because you said that you felt a little depressed and was like, you know,
what kept me going
what kept you going?
is, I would say, just the possibility of the good things that I knew were going to happen in the future. That's really what kept me going. Um, and I think something I've struggled with all my life is having this like overwhelming, and when I say overwhelming, I don't mean that in like a negative way. I mean that in like a very positive way. It was this overwhelming feeling of like I am meant to do more with my life. I've always felt that. And I think you tell yourself like, but I don't have a college degree. I don't have the tools to do it. I don't like the universe is telling you you are meant to do more with your life.
Yes.
You have these skills. The things that come easily to me, like writing and, sharing my thoughts and being able to uh disseminate and pick apart like some really complex issues. Like for me, it's fun. It's like really interesting. It's really fascinating. For other people, it's a bit more difficult. For me, it's easy. So the things that I always found easy were exactly the things that would help launch me into a space where like I'm able to take care of myself. I've opened a business. I'm able to, reach thousands of people around the world and share my story. So it's the things that I always shied away from and I didn't think would, not to say they are not valuable. You don't think what you can do is special until it's very obvious, you know?
Yeah.
So yeah,
Yeah, you are a beautiful writer. You
thank
have this
you.
ability to um articulate like the Khmer history and culture in such a beautiful way.
Thank
So when I
you. Thank
read your
you.
stuff, I'm like, damn, she is a good writer.
Thank you. I appreciate that so much. That's an amazing compliment. I thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, and so how did you so when you're in Cambodia,
Mhm.
can they tell that you are from America? Or
100%.
oh that yeah? Yeah?
100%. I daily, the second I step out of my apartment,
Yeah.
I'm and I don't have any ill feelings towards this, but like I'm always mistaken for a different ethnicity,
Mm,
another Asian ethnicity, but like I would say like 80% of the time, uh, people don't think I'm Khmer. Because you have to remember, like, we grow up here eating different foods. We're taller, and as women, growing up here, we're curvier. We look a certain way. We dress a certain way. My mannerisms are a lot different than young women, um, and my counterparts in Khmer. So it's culturally, it's very obvious. Visually and aesthetically, it's very obvious that I didn't grow up in Cambodia. And this isn't to say that people in Cambodia don't look like Americans or other diaspora, but I think for me it's very obvious. Um, but yeah, I'm always mistaken for non-Khmer. Um, and even though I want to say like my Khmer is good, I would say my Khmer is good enough to where I can order stuff at a restaurant. I can have a chat with, my jewelry vendors. I can have a chat with like wait staff or, local friends and and get around town. I'm perfectly fine. They know I'm from America or, outside the country because that's the first thing they comment on. But yeah, it's been awesome. It's been awesome.
Yeah. So how was the adjustment of living in Cambodia versus America? Like, how was it for you to adjust living there?
Um, so when I moved to Cambodia, it was actually during COVID restrictions. So going back to August of 2021, I can't remember how long the country had been shut down for, but um, most international flights, they were still operating, just not as often. And going into Cambodia, you had to like mandatory 2 weeks quarantine in a hotel, either a government choice of hotel or this fancy schmancy hotel that you had to pay, X amount of dollars for. Um, but it was 2 weeks in quarantine. And, most people in America, we only have 2 weeks of vacation time within a year. So if you're losing 2 weeks of vacation time during quarantine, like you're not going to travel. So um, going to Cambodia, August 2021, sat through 2 weeks of quarantine. I was not prepared for that at all. Um, those 2 weeks alone, I was like really, it gave me a chance to like really question and really just double down on like, okay, this is for real. This is really happening. Um, and then getting out of there, found an apartment. Excuse me, sorry. I booked a hotel for exactly 10 days and I gave myself, less than 2 weeks to find an apartment. Within a couple days, I had viewed approximately 30 apartments in
Oh,
various neighborhoods of Phnom Penh. Yeah, 30. I would see like between 4 to 6 per day. And at the end of that, 10 day or no, before the 10 days was up at the hotel, not the quarantine hotel, the one that I booked after I got out of the hotel, out of quarantine was I made the decision to move into an apartment um within like a week. Signed the lease papers. That was my very first apartment anywhere in America or Cambodia. Very first apartment on my own. Um, I think the adjustment for me was weather. It's hot, it's humid. You have to time things. You have to time your errands in a way that like you're not experiencing heat exhaustion or heat stroke by the afternoon. Culturally, things are very different. It's funny because like when I'm in America and when I'm in certain spaces, I'm like, oh my gosh, I am so Khmer. And then when you go over to so Khmer, I find myself saying, oh my God, I am so American because we still have like culturally, I don't know, I'm trying to think of like a really good example. Like I want modern amenities, like something silly like, in Sokmai, you don't have both washer and dryer. You just have a washer. So you have
mm,
to hang dry your clothes.
yeah.
Imagine having to hang dry your clothes in like 80% humidity weather and still having to run errands and cooking for yourself or figuring out like how to get from A to B in a tuk-tuk and having enough time to do dinner. And then you have to remember to hang your clothes outside. But then if you forget it, then it's it's all these
Yeah.
little things that like add up to the experience of living in Cambodia. Um, the traffic and the pollution, the city pollution. You don't want to be outside for too long. You don't want to be in the sun for too long. And not that I don't mind being tan or in the sun or whatever, but um, you have to be mindful that because Cambodia is near the equator, the sun's much stronger, things like that.
Yeah.
And then what's another big thing? There's a lot of similarities, but the adjustment to living in Cambodia, it was just really like sinking into the thing of like, I'm really on my own,
Mhm, mhm.
and really having the opportunity to depend on myself.
And do you have any family in Cambodia? Any close
I have no immediate family in Cambodia.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have cousins, but I have cousins on both sides, and I have like distant cousins on both sides. But to be frank, because we didn't grow up together and our lifestyles are really different, it's hard,
Yeah.
to number one, build a relationship,
Hmm.
um, and to find things in common. Um, I would say that I'm much closer to my friends in
Yeah.
Cambodia. Like if I were to have an emergency, they would be the first people that I go to.
Mhm.
Um, yeah.
Yeah. Well, brought me back to when you were talking about there's only washers and dryers there. Oh
Yeah.
no, only washers there. I
Yeah.
remember my first time I was like 18, went to Sukhumai for my first time, and
Uh-huh.
I remember them like washing my clothes, and
Uh-huh.
then they're air drying it in the back. And like
Hmm.
we had guests coming in and out, and I was so embarrassed. I'm like, dude, that's my cow sleeping right there.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, for us, it's like awkward, right? It's like one of those
Yeah,
little
yeah.
things that you don't really think about. You're like, oh yeah.
Yeah, they don't
That's
care, but for me, for
yeah.
coming, I'm like, shit, that's my cow sleep and guests coming in and out.
Mhm. It's like all on display, and you're like,
Yeah.
should I be putting this somewhere else? Like, I don't want y'all to see this.
Yeah.
Um, oh, that's another thing. Privacy.
Okay. Uh-huh.
Um, and I guess extent like our elders have somewhat primed us for this. Like if I'm okay, I'm speaking for myself, but like, when you after, so many years or whatever, and you see your family again, your elders might say, "Oh, you've gotten a little fat."
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Or, "Oh, you've gotten so skinny, like why aren't you eating? You should be," like they're very blunt, right? In
Yes.
Cambodia, strangers are just straight up very blunt with you.
Yeah.
Why do you look different? You dress different. You're foreign, aren't you? You speak Khmer funny,
Yeah.
in Khmer គាត់ថាអូនឯងអ្នកកញ្ចន់ខ្មែរអញ្ចឹងបាននិយាយខ្មែរដើន
Yeah.
like,
That's what
oh,
they said
that's why
too.
you
Yeah.
speak
Done,
Khmer
done.
funny because
Yeah.
you're not from here. And if you don't have a thick skin, having to affirm that you're Khmer constantly, at one point I will admit, like it was hurtful, like to constantly be like not poked, but like in a sense that where you're questioned all the time. Are you Khmer? Why is your Khmer so funny? Why do you sound different? Why do you dress different? If you're Khmer, like, you know, why do you look a certain way? And, there was comments about my weight and, if I was married or have kids yet, or if you're living in Cambodia, oh no, one of the most common questions or remarks that I would get would be, what are you doing in Cambodia if you're an American? If you have a Khmer citizenship, why did you, a US citizen who has so much privilege and access, why did you choose to come back to Cambodia?
Mm.
Right? Because the insinuation is um, living in the US is better than living in Cambodia. And this is in terms of like access to education, opportunities, jobs, things like that, safety, blah, blah, blah. So it's assumed by uh, people in Cambodia. And this isn't incorrect by any means, but it doesn't reflect the whole, picture, right? And one of the questions I would get a lot was, if you're in Cambodia alone, so that means you're not married. Like, oh, you're an adult, uh, and you decided to come back on your own. Like, why? What's wrong with you? You know? And so I think at the beginning, I don't mind it so much now, but I think in the beginning it bothered me because I'm like, when you're in America, um, people don't question you if you want to go to college, or they don't question you if you go to a different state for college or move because of a boyfriend, or things like that. Like those big decisions made by women in their 20s and 30s, like it's not that out of the ordinary. In Cambodia, it's very unusual, right? So me being questioned about that and just the bluntness in the questioning was something, it was a challenge.
Yeah, I bet. I bet. Like, what? You're from America? Why are you living here in Cambodia? What chunk?
Mhm,
You know?
mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, almost every day. Every
Yeah.
day. Yeah.
Wow. So let's talk about how you started documenting Cambodia and sharing on Instagram, like the
Mhm.
beauty of it. Like,
I joined Instagram in 2013, 2014, like maybe a year after they launched, and it was really just to keep in touch with family in other states. And it was just a natural progression of, I think I this is hard because people ask me like it was always a personal platform, you know.
started
If you look at it
personal.
now,
Yeah.
yeah, it was always a personal platform, and I actually don't think there was any extended period of time where my Instagram was private. Um, I was always very open. I would keep certain things private, but I was always very open, like, hey, this is the event in Long Beach that I was a part of. This was the festival I was, um, you know, assisting with or coordinate. You know what? It was always like I was excited to share my experiences. And so me documenting my experience leading up to and living in Cambodia, it was always something that just felt natural to me. And because I was writing about it and, you know, being mindful of like what photos I was sharing, like myself in a beautiful location or like this beautiful plate of food or look at the traffic and the chaos in the middle of the city or stuff like that. It was always something that I was like, I think this is cool.
Yeah, I
Why
thought it
don't I
was
just
cool too,
share?
just
Yeah.
because us in America, we don't see it much. And the
Yeah.
way you documented it, it was like, you're telling a story. What I
Mhm.
love about you too is like you tell a story behind the post that you write. There's always something deeper to it, not just a photo, an empty photo. It's like, here's a photo and some history behind it. So I love what you do in that
Thank
and
you.
connecting us Khmer Americans to, Cambodia and the way you view it of like you incorporate the Khmer American and you make it more relatable to us. Like, okay, because you are Khmer American now living in Khmer, it's like
Mhm.
you give us like, direct access to like
Yeah.
this is what it is.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, because it's my personal perspective. And I think that the reason why, exactly like you said, the reason why it resonated with so many people, specifically Khmer Americans and other Khmer diaspora, was because it was like a firsthand account of everything that's happening. Hey, I'm gonna go, like, let's go with me to like check out some apartments today. This is
Yeah.
the beautiful view. This is what I can get for 550 a month. This is the neighborhood that I'm in. This is the noodle shop that I can get a bowl of $3 noodles. Like, this is what the marketplace looks like. It was those everyday things that, to um a local person, like, yeah, that's their everyday life. But for us, because we didn't grow up in that environment, of course it's new, it's exciting, it's beautiful, it's interesting. Sometimes it's shocking. And one of the things that was always really important to me was I did not want to sugarcoat things. um Not every single post was like a happy post. And I was always, I was always very, and this is going back to uh Salary and Khmer,
Mhm.
when those days of, Thursday, Friday, and sometimes there would be events on the weekend, amongst this group of like the Khmer teachers and my dad and his colleagues and the other teachers, the Khmer students and stuff. I always knew, I always had a finger on the pulse of what was happening in Cambodia, even as a kid. Like, I knew
Mm.
about politics, I knew about the socioeconomic status of certain kinds of people in Cambodia. I didn't have a like a firsthand view, but I had a firsthand account of everything that was happening. And so as I started documenting my personal journey of living in Cambodia, I was always very mindful of like, I know that the stories in the media, in mainstream media, one, not a whole lot, being shared about Cambodia on mainstream media, but the stories that were being shared in mainstream media about Cambodia were almost always negative,
Mm,
always bad, crime. At the time, in the 90s, like politics were all over the place. It was not a very safe place to be in Cambodia at the time. Um, and so I was always acutely aware of like, if I share something about Cambodia, I want people to understand, yes, it was a scary place, but this is what it's like now.
yeah, the people.
Um, that's always really important to me because I want to, something that a lot of people ask me about safety in Cambodia. Is it safe? How is it like as a woman living in Cambodia? How is your safety as a woman? Or do you feel safe going out at night? Um, how do you make friends? How do you move about living in a capital city, but specifically in Cambodia? Those are always like the questions coming up, like the safety. And it's because how Cambodia is viewed from the outside world, like the external lens looking into Cambodia, it's not very positive. And I want to do my little part of just being like, this is how my life is like. I'm not negating anybody else's view or perspective or their lives, but this is what my life is like. And I'm gonna be honest with you. So I was always very aware. And whenever I share stuff, like you said, I don't like sharing. It's a visual platform, you know. But thankfully for me, I can write long form content and I can share a story and a perspective. But like, I don't want to just post a pretty picture, you know? And I'm super, super grateful that people like you and other friends that I've made over the years have really resonated with the things that I write because they're like, oh, she has the same issues that I do, like, but she's living in Cambodia and she's living her life and having fun. And sometimes she has really bad days, sometimes she has really good days, and like, look at what she's doing. And so it's just, one of the best things I can do with, aligning myself with my goals is just to live my life and make the decisions that I can and that make me happy. And in doing that, if that inspires the next person, not necessarily to move to Cambodia, because I'm always very careful with that, but not necessarily to move to Cambodia, but as long as you are doing something that you love and following your dreams, like that, I feel like my work, so to speak, is worth it.
Yeah. So what would you say if somebody's listening right now and it's like they have a dream or something that's calling them to take the next step, like next bold step in their life? And because you took your big step to move to Cambodia, what
Mhm.
would you say to a person listening right now that is like in between of like, should I do it? Should I not? To pursuing their dreams. Like, what would you tell them?
I would say that the thing that you are most scared of on the other side of that is what you're looking for. And what I mean by that is I've always had this fear of I'm too scared to do this because I don't know if I'm equipped to do it. I don't know where to go, like how to ask questions or who to go to or I don't know how to do this thing, right? Whether it's moving to Cambodia or starting something or whatever, like on the other side of that fear is a whole different world. And once you get over that hump, you're like, oh, it's not that bad. Like I figured it
Yes.
out, and it's this relief and that feeling and that weight off of your shoulders, it it starts to like build your confidence. And it's something that, yes, it can be taught, but like if you don't, like, you can sit in a lecture, you can, read as many books, you can watch as many podcasts as you want, but you yourself, you have to take those actionable steps. And it can be the smallest thing. And something that I tell people when they ask me a similar question is, decide what life you want, and every decision that you make, from making your bed to, having a good breakfast in the morning, doing your meditation, whatever, like every single step that you make, it's going to contribute to you accomplishing that dream. And yeah, on the other side of all this like scare, all of this like fear, is the thing that you want. And if you get there and you're like, well, shit, this is not what I expected. Okay. So you figured it out, and then move on. Like, it's easy. But if we constantly live in this state of like panic and this state of fear, like, oh man, I don't want to do it. Then guess what? 5, 10, 15 years pass and you're like, the time is going to pass anyway. You might as well try. And I was my first birthday on my own, back in September 2021. um I I rented a villa for myself. Everyone thought I was
I've seen
crazy.
that. Yeah.
I rented a villa by myself, and it actually wasn't that expensive. It was like less than $100 a night, but it was in a beautiful location down in Gaip, which is down south in Cambodia. A beautiful green lush beach town. Um it was just like a little gift to myself, and I was like, I fucking did it, you know? And it was one of those things where like no one is going to tell you, no one's going to come into your life, and well, for me, no one's going to come into your life and be like, okay, now you can enjoy your life. Now you can treat yourself. And as women, we're taught to like, you know, not enjoy things, or not show too much excitement. You don't want to seem greedy. You don't want to seem like too privileged or too conceited or cocky or whatever, right? But I was like, no, I worked really hard for this, you know? And it was one of those things where like I was like, no, I can enjoy myself, you know? Um, yeah.
Yeah. And I love that when you talk about just like the other side of fear, because all of us, we all have a dream. We all
Mhm.
fear is gonna be with us forever. But
Yeah.
it's learning about fear. Like, why are you scared to do this? You know? And flipping that for me and you, I had to go overcome my fear and the uncomfortableness of, speaking, because if I didn't start this podcast, I wouldn't be talking to you, right?
No, you
It's
do
a
such a
part of
great job though.
it's a side of like, okay, why am I afraid to start a podcast?
Hmm.
I'm a beginner, like all these, like you can have all these excuses and fear, right? But it's just like, fuck it. Take the first step. What is the
Yeah.
first step? Just do
Yeah.
it. And in the long run, you will um get better, adjust, and see. If you try it out, do you like this? If not, move on to something else. But
Yeah.
I just want to say that because we both are overcoming our fears and
Mhm.
pursuing our dreams, that me and you are here today talking to each other.
Yeah.
And
I love
we're
that.
both Khmer. And it's like, for me now is looking at other Cambodian Americans, or just just everyone, that we all have something within us. But how can we bring that what's in us out to this world to share? I
Absolutely.
see it in you, and you are doing that. And as we grow and evolve, we're going to change too. So it's just the beauty of like, do you want to sit and be the same person today? Like, ask yourself right now, are you happy with who you are right now in this moment? And if you're not, then maybe change something daily that you do in your life. If you like writing, maybe start writing something every day. If you like speaking, maybe speak, to your phone every day. I don't know what
Mhm.
it is, but it's like whatever your genius or your heart is calling, tap into that.
Yeah,
I just
absolutely.
yeah. And it's
Um, Sorry, go on, Taran.
no, 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 and it's just like how both of us now is like, okay, um how can we inspire and help the generations in front of us, behind us, whatever it is, to take that big step in life? Because
Yeah,
we
absolutely.
we are here limited on this earth, right? And we have overcome so many challenges and traumas and and what our parents been through. And is learning to like, how did you heal from like, intergenerational trauma, like from our parents, from the killing fields? Because we all, whatever that they didn't heal, pass on to us.
Yeah, absolutely. I think in during my childhood, like we were talking about earlier, um, Khmer school was like a huge help. Um, Having other Khmer American kids who shared similar stories, I got to meet with them weekly and be in a space that was safe. Um, And I'm not gonna say it was easy growing up in the way that we did, because I always knew there was something different about our family. Um, we don't have tons of generations to reach back towards and like glean advice in terms of, living in the US. So, we had to navigate certain systems by ourselves. Um, School, higher education, looking for jobs, navigating the politics of a workplace. Um, and I will credit my parents in giving me as much knowledge as they could, but it came from a place of like survival. Like they taught me how to survive. Um, but as I got older, I understood that if I wanted to thrive in a way that made me personally happy, I needed to figure that out on my own. And um but I think to answer a question, like trial and error, you know, um, searching out. I don't want to podcasts, videos, books, inspirational books. When I was at a really low point, this may sound silly, but like I watched a lot of Gary V videos just so I could hear someone speak life
Yeah.
into other people's dreams. And I was like, man, that person's like 50, 60 years old and they started over. Like this girl, her parents were also immigrants or refugees. And, there were like Gary Vee's done like a really good job in like sharing his perspective of being the son of immigrants and growing up and not getting very good grades like me. Surprisingly, like sometimes I got really bad grades, and it wasn't because I'm not I wasn't a smart kid. I had a hard time applying myself. And
I
that
didn't
would,
get good grades either.
really? Okay, so we're yeah, I'm not alone. Okay.
No.
Um, but to answer your question, like trial and error.
Yes.
And when you were talking earlier, I remembered a point that I wanted to share in regards to the fear that a lot of us my kids experience is, we grew up in households that, we weren't well off. We were on public assistance and we didn't have a lot of financial backing. So if you made a decision and it was a bad financial decision, you wouldn't be eating the next week. You wouldn't be able to um make it to the next class field trip or whatever. There wasn't a lot of extra money to make a lot of different decisions, or there wasn't a lot of like extra fun money to play around with. And that really, I didn't realize like the psychological effects of like growing up poor until I was an adult. And I'm like, oh, me hoarding things is like, I do this because I grew up poor, you know, and there's nothing wrong with that. But at some point, you have to, like, at some point, I realized like, it's not the money that I'm after, it's the freedom of choice that money allows me. And that's what really motivated me to figure out how to make money on my own, how to save up money, how to really like hustle hard and put away money for myself. And especially, and very importantly, I must say, being a woman and making your own money is so important. I want to stress this, and I will die on this hill. As a woman, we have to remember we always have to make our own money in your own bank account, in your own name, whether it's your apartment, owning a home, um, the money that you make. Yes, it's great to have that like cushion, but the allow you to make decisions that um, are aligned with your goals. Because, you know, I'm going to use the example of my parents. When my parents divorced, um, my mom didn't have a college education. You know, she had to make some really, really hard decisions. And at the time, I didn't understand why she made the decisions, but it was because she didn't have like a whole lot of choices. And I remembered seeing her struggle, and I remember thinking like, I don't want to be like that. You know, so you learn from your circumstances, and you learn from seeing your parents go through things and make decisions that they obviously didn't want to make, but they had to, given their very, very few choices. And so when young women come to me and they're like, Long, I really want to do what you did. I want to move to Cambodia, or I want to do this with my life, but I'm not sure. And, you know, my parents aren't supportive, or I'm in a bad relationship, or blah, blah, blah. I always stress, save up your coin, then make the next move. You can plan all you want, but if you don't have money in the bank, and if you don't have that financial backing, you are going to be put into positions that are not comfortable.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because, my mom, like my dad was shot and killed uh um back in the 90s. So my mom was a single mother raising four kids on her own. And that's when, she had to like, what do I do next? We're on, government assistance, but she had to do something else. She can't just live off of that. So my mom like sold things like, like balai, vegetables, pack it up, and then whatever DVD, CDs, like Cambodian CDs, like music, like whatever she had, she'll put in her
Mhm.
cart and she'll push it and sell it in the Cambodian neighborhoods, you know? So thank you to all the parents, your mom and dad that bought things for my mom because you guys supported us.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so my mom, she was a single mother, so she had to work, maybe she didn't get a regular job, but she had a hustle on, selling corn that she grew. And then when she went to sell corn, she made probably like 30 bucks selling her own corn. So she put it, and then she stopped at Paradise, and Paradise had like little gambling spots. So my mom went to go stop and play thong. So she put her corn that she sold, and the money in her little bag, and parked her little cart in front of the house. And then she forgot about it, came out, and somebody stole her money.
Oh
But it's,
no.
it's just the little things that whatever it is, like you don't have to open up a big ass business to sell something. Maybe it's
Yeah.
just corn from your backyard.
Yeah.
Whatever it is, but it's like,
Start with what you have.
yes,
Start
start with
with
what
what
you
you have.
have. It doesn't
Yeah.
matter, and it's just like you can do this. You can do this. And a lot of us have uh a lot of us is like the story in our head that's stopping us from doing it. Like what story are you telling yourself? Like sit down, like what is it holding you back? What story is it that is making you suffer? What story are you repeating yourself over and over again? You know? And one of the stories when I was younger was the Cambodian superstitious, the super, I can't even pronounce, superstitious. Is it? How do you say that?
Cambodian superstition.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So
Uh-huh.
growing up, I was like, oh, come tell new, like it's bad luck, this and that. So I grew up in high school thinking about like, man, I was so fearful because of all the Cambodian superstition. And then
Mhm.
one day I was like, you know what? I can't do something and think about, oh, something bad's gonna happen to me. So in high
Mhm.
school, I recognized the story I was telling myself and I had to let it go because it was not serving me, you know?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I had to let it go. And after that, I'm just like, it's, you know, growing up, there was a lot of fear from, Tani, um, just like the Cambodian superstitious stuff
Yeah,
that
there
really,
we were always told to fear these unseen consequences that were
yeah,
so dire, like don't do it or else
yeah,
society is going to look at you crazy or you're going to bring shame to the family. And it was just like it was just a life and death situation. Like if you make this certain decision, it was just so bad, right?
yeah,
So yeah, I definitely, that really resonates with me. Maybe not the superstition, but very much so, like don't do this or you're going to embarrass the family. Don't
yeah.
be this kind of girl or blah blah blah. Like if you do this, then make sure you do it in private, it, like all that stuff. So yeah, that totally resonates with me. But really props to your mom. And going back to what you shared earlier, the amount of like heart and drive that your mom had after your dad passed, I mean, really kudos to her. And man, just seeing how you and your siblings are, I don't want to assume anything, but like to see you guys thriving and like living the lives of as like functional adults now, I that makes me so happy and so proud to see. And I just want to share that with you. And I think I remembered you writing something, or maybe it was like a video of your first videos, and you were talking about it. And I just remember thinking like, I'd like her. I'd like her because despite this incredibly sad and tragic thing happening to your dad, you still found the courage to put yourself out there. And I always admire that about you. So thank you for
Oh, you're
sharing
welcome.
your
You're
story.
welcome. Yeah. Yeah. And, the courage of like forgiveness, I was like, even though I lost my dad at 7 years old, 8 years old, it's funny how like, even though my dad, I didn't have much time with my dad, he gave me this incredible uh gift of
Mhm,
forgiveness, of forgiving the man that shot him, you know? And and the man that shot him, well, they say the kid that shot him that time, he was
mhm,
18 years old and he's Khmer, he's from a gang from Stockton. And now that he's been incarcerated for like 28 years, he is
mhm,
out.
mhm,
He's out. He's, living trying to survive this life.
mhm,
Just imagine the adjustment. And some people was like, how can you forgive him? You know?
mhm,
And to me is, first of all, I couldn't forgive him until I forgave myself first. And is first is about you. Can you forgive yourself? You can't forgive anybody else until you forgive yourself for all the things you've done. What was it? There was a lot.
yeah,
Yeah. And this is coming to like, what do you want this life, this the future to be like? I have two girls. I don't want them to be holding grudges and living a life of like, of hatred.
yeah,
And for me, it's like, if you want to heal the world, start with yourself. Look within yourself. And for me, it was that part.
mhm,
I have no grudge, no hate against this man that killed my father because I understood. I read books about him. I read about, he also came to America and survived the killing field and stuff. But, he lost his mom and sister during that time and they came to Stockton. and they were in the hood. So for him was trying to find his group of people. And that's where the gang started, where he felt, he found out his family, or, like during that time in the early 90s, 80s. And to understand his background and what he's been through, I think that made me understand and was uh like more compassionate to him, because he just, made a wrong decision, and then boom. But now that, because I've been writing to him in prison for, I think, 5, 6 years before he was out, and
Wow.
he's not the same man. He's not the same kid when you were 18. Like, look at all of us. Are you the
Hmm.
same person when you were 18? No, like we grew so much,
Yeah.
because I feel like if you're in your 20s and 30s, there's a lot of, we go through a lot of things. That's where we're trying to find ourselves, and like what we like, what we don't like. And now that I'm in my 40s, I feel like I'm actually like living my life now. It's like my purpose. Why
Hmm.
are you here? It's like, why are you here? It's like, that's the question. Why are you here, Sarani?
Girl, you got a lot of compassion because I don't know if I could do it, honestly. I'm listening to you and I'm in awe. I'm in awe. Um, that takes a lot. I honestly I don't know if I could do what you did, but that's amazing. I think, to answer a question, I think at different stages of my life that answer is always going to be evolving. Like, why am I here? In my teens, it was different. In my 20s, it was different. In my 30s, it was different. I'm 39. I turned 40 in a couple months. And, I'm really like finally, like you said, like I'm finally feeling like I feel more comfortable in my skin. I'm like, oh, this, like everything for me, like it's like starting to click. And it like makes sense. I'm like, oh, this is the impact that I'm here to make. This is what makes me happy. This is what brings me joy. You know, this is what I get excited about. And for me, a lot of that is Cambodia, but more so in the sense of like just doing things that make me happy. Um, I think my purpose right now is being true to myself and sharing my journey. Um, I think I answered this question like on a little poll questionnaire thing on my IG stories, but one of the things was, um, and I'm paraphrasing, but one of the things was, why are you on social media if, your content gets stolen and your pictures get used to catfish people and scam people and whatever else? Like, why don't you just make your stuff private? And, my answer to that question is, if we're always going to be living in fear of our stuff getting stolen, of our image getting stolen, of our story, whatever, um, then we wouldn't be able to be sharing our because I don't know the impact this video is going to make for someone else. Hopefully, a couple of people will be like, "Oh, that's cool. Like she went for her dreams. Like maybe that means I can too." And that's what I always try to remember. Like me living my life and doing what makes me happy and just sharing that and putting that out there in the universe. I'm being the person that the younger version of me needed to see. I needed to see someone like me with dark hair, dark eyes, brown skin out there in the world doing the damn thing, making mistakes, learning from them, and just like living life. I didn't see that when I was younger. I always thought that a luxurious life, the fun, the traveling, enjoying, different food and meeting new people and doing all these things. I thought that was for, you know, like I'm gonna be honest, I thought it was always white people in the media. It was always blonde and blue-eyed. So when you don't see yourself in the media, you don't see a representation of yourself. The little version of me was like, I couldn't even dream of my own future because I couldn't see myself out there. So for every single post and reel and video and whatever thing piece of content that I share, I always keep in mind, is this going to make the younger version of me proud? Is this going to make me laugh? Is it going to make me happy? Because that's the person who I'm trying to impress. Because at the end of the day, you know, when I go to sleep at night, among the million things that go on in my head, I'm like, am I proud of myself? You know? And maybe this is a thing with like Asian parents, but like I don't know if I've ever heard my parents say, I'm proud of you for doing this. And, you know, I moved away from having that burning desire to like get their approval for everything. I don't think I'm ever going to get like a verbal confirmation, right? And so I had to shift this perspective into, okay, am I doing what makes me proud, what makes me happy? You know, and especially with, I'm going to use the example of like starting my business and starting registering my LLC and starting my you know, online journey with that. Um like that's something I'm really proud of. And you know, when going back to your question, like what's my purpose? Just to live life in alignment with my goals and my dreams. And that's always going to be shifting. I don't know if I'm going to be in Cambodia forever. I don't know if I'm going to have this Buddha pendant business forever. I love it and it brings me a lot of joy. I'm so blessed that I can take care of myself and in turn bless other people, um, make the choices that I want, but that's because I made really hard decisions and got myself to a place where I could do that. But in terms of like what is my purpose, like that's it. Like being the version I'm trying to be the person that I needed to see when I was younger. And that's I think that would be like my biggest takeaway. Um and you know, in my 40s it might be something different, but right now I'm really happy with where I'm at and the things that I'm sharing. I'm so blessed.
Yeah.
I'm really, yeah.
And like you said, all of us, we're all evolving, and 10 years from now, 5 years from now, it's gonna look different. And
Yeah.
I wanna ask you this question. So, what would you tell younger Sarani that was, at the lowest moment in her life? What would you tell her? What would you tell your younger self that what you know now? I want you to speak to little Sarani.
Um, that even the adults don't know what they're doing. We're all just figuring it out.
Yep.
Um, you know, when you're little and you look up to like movie stars and you look up to your parents and you're like, they're like superheroes. They're these big figures in your life that can do no wrong. And then when you become an adult yourself, you're like, oh shit, nobody knows what they're doing. We're just out here winging it.
Yep.
You make a decision, you do it, you fail, you're like, okay, you move on. It gets easier with each failure, with each triumph and success. You're like, okay, I can do it. And it just, when you follow those steps, right or wrong, I mean, well, hopefully right, but when you follow those steps, it just it compounds, it starts compounding and it just starts building your confidence. And um yeah, we're just out here winging it. And also like another piece of advice would be it gets better. You know, at my lowest point, oh, that's what I want to talk to you about. Um, so when I was on the boat, just a series of decisions, and I was like, okay, this boat situation, I'm gonna use this time to um save up my money. I was doing odd jobs. I was working Lyft, believe it or not. I did the car rental service, and then I would work Lyft like super early morning throughout the day and sometimes late at night to make the money and save it. And I was putting all this money away. And looking back, I think I was kind of scared to tell people, not scared, but like, you know, when you have a dream that is unlike other people's dreams, you understand like how sacred it is to you. Because if you start telling so many people, um, deep down you're like, oh shit, what if it doesn't happen? Like, am I going to be embarrassed if it doesn't work out? And then I have to explain to all these people. Like you start being very protective of it. And at the time I was like, I don't know if I want to share that I'm on the boat. And then one day I'm like, fuck it. Like what yeah, I do want you to see. Like I was struggling at that time. I remember at some point I had like $200 in my bank account,
Yeah,
you
well,
know?
for me watching you, I didn't know you were struggling. I just know like, oh shit, that's a adventurous. You were adventurous, living on a boat. Like, how
Yeah.
many of us had this get to an opportunity to live on a boat? Like, like very little.
Yeah. And looking back, like I had to, like your mind is everything, right? Like your mental space is something that's so special. And at that point, even though financially I knew I was at my lowest, like mentally, I was like, I'm going to treat this as an adventure. I'm going to treat this as an adventure. I was like taking pictures. I was like doing my makeup and doing my hair. And I was like, I look cute today. I'm going to take some pictures in the harbor and on the boat. And I just treated it as an adventure because even though I was sad and lonely and like struggling really hard to like make that money and put it away and save and um all of these things that relatively speaking it was a struggle and I don't want to negate anybody else's journeys, but like when we are at our lowest we experience everything at 100%. Like I remember someone telling me, well, you weren't like homeless, you weren't like on the streets or anything. But for me, like only, and there's some things that I'll never tell a soul what I went through because it's personal to me, right? But I know what I went through and I experienced everything at 100% because it was really freaking hard. And the amount of, the amount of like mental strength that I personally required to bring myself out of that situation, only I know that. I can write and I can talk about it as much as I want, but only I, deep down, I know what I went through. And for me, I remember those times on the boat. I would come home, I would come back to the boat at like 1, 2 in the morning, you know, park the car in a safe spot, walk like a block, 2 blocks in the dark back to the boat, open up the the gate key and walk the dock, get into the boat, and I would just sit there and I would like lie there and like open up this hatch, like, and it was just like a direct view of the stars. I would hear like the seals in the background. It was really funny, like looking back, like I kind of I miss it because it was a very like visceral time for me because I was experiencing everything at like 1,000%. um those are the moments that I was like, yes, I'm experiencing this now, but I had the strongest belief that this is not the end of my story. It gets better. It gets better. I treated everything like an adventure. I'm like, today I'm going to be going for a 6 a.m. walk on the beach. I'm going to be making, I wouldn't share this publicly, but I would be like, my goal is to make X amount of dollars today so that I could put a little bit towards food and the rest goes into savings and blah, blah, blah. I knew that everything that I was working towards, I was going to get myself out of the situation. And nobody was going to take that away from me. And there were many, many times that I wanted to give up. And I was like, okay, what is the alternative? Right. And I'm like, okay, I could find an office job. I can find a 9 to 5. I could go back to school and blah, blah, blah. And I weighed my options and I'm like, everything. And I'm not going to say that all those things were out of the question. It just didn't feel right at the time. Everything, every cell in my body was like, take your ass to Cambodia.
Mm.
Everything. And it was to the point where it was like an obsession.
It was like
In my
calling
head,
you,
it
like,
was, yeah, it was in my head and in my heart. I was like, I don't know where my life is going, but I know the next step, as long as I can get my ass to Cambodia, I can figure everything else out from there. It's gonna unfold. I'm gonna meet the people I need to meet. I'm gonna experience the situations that I need to go through. Everything is gonna start falling in line once I get to Cambodia. So all of the emotional and mental exertion, everything was geared towards Cambodia. It was like it was tunnel vision. And I used to write about this a lot, and it was like I would write like they were journal entries, because the thing with social media is I'm just like on my phone, right? And when you're sharing that, it's not that I forgot that people were watching and reading, but it was a way to like release my feelings and be like, you know what? I'm fully aware this is really freaking hard right now, but I'm going to share it because I want to be able to look back and be like, I got through it, you know? And um those posts and those pictures and videos and me sharing my life during that time on the boat was just as much for me as it was for the sake of just sharing my story, but it was really for me. It was really, really for me. um yeah, I don't know how else to describe it other than it was tunnel vision. And I'm really happy that this dream manifested itself in the way that it did, because if it hadn't been for those crazy decisions and the consistency and the struggle that I went through, um, I would not have the things I have today.
mm,
I wouldn't have the small business that I have. I wouldn't have the friends and the support system that I have in my life, and the freedom that I have now to do the things that I want. I wouldn't have any of that. Um, yeah.
yeah. Well, thank you so much for sharing, what you've been through. And uh because life is not easy. Life is like the ocean, right? There's rough waves in our lives, there's calm, soothing, they're just mellow, but our life is always like constantly moving. We're always flowing. And it's like learning to as for you, as you living on the boat, you said it was adventurous, right? Like
Hmm.
you put that as, oh, this is my adventure,
Hmm.
versus saying, oh, I'm here like complaining and like being down on yourself. But like you treat it as an adventure.
Hmm.
How Yes, and I love that, because our life is an adventure. Our life is if you want to live in comfort forever,
Hmm.
a part of you is gonna die. Just because comfort is comfort is what um you're believed to, like, oh, you're supposed to have it comfortable. I don't know where I'm
Hmm.
going with this, but I'm just saying, like, do you wanna, like, you pick your hard, you know? You want a life of comfort, you're gonna
100%,
be your
100%.
life is gonna be harder later. If you can, uh, be in the uncomfortable, like, like, feeling like, "Oh, this is uncomfortable," but you know that you have to do this for your own self,
Yeah,
It's like, pick your hard. Choose your hard. What hard are you gonna take? The
absolutely.
comfort or the discomfort? The di
Absolutely.
And when I say discomfort, it's like it's like that feeling of like, okay, my next move. Oh man, it's
Hmm.
uncomfortable, right?
Hmm.
It's like trusting yourself. Can you do this?
Hmm.
And if we do make a mistake, we're human.
Yeah,
Like give yourself a little grace. Be kind to yourself.
yeah.
And to me, I think life is always unfolding in front of us. And I have no idea what 5 years look like for me, or for 5 years look like for you. But is what are you doing to um what are you doing in your life right now to make it better, to trust yourself?
Hmm.
And I don't know where I'm going with this. But anyways, because we all have a story, right? And your story can help somebody, whatever it is. Sarani's story, you and your journey, I know that you're helping a lot of people out with what you're sharing within your life. And we all have the story, but it's like learning how do we bring this in a art form or whatever category you're called to be in: music, writing, acting, um whatever it is, maybe a teacher, it doesn't matter, but there is something that's calling you, and do you dare to meet it?
I feel that 100%. Yeah, um one of the things that the list of like topics that we were going to cover today, one of the things that just jogged my memory right now when you were speaking was and I don't think this is unique to Khmer culture or Khmer American culture, but like as women, as young girls, when we were growing up, I was taught to like play it safe and to
Yes.
fear the world and to be careful because people are going to be out to get you, and um, find a sensible job and find a sensible, partner and blah, blah, blah. And, do all you're given this like set of rules to live by, to abide by, because if you don't, then there's going to be dire consequences, right? And like it's so hard to intentionally buck against those expectations, whether they're internally from your family or just the general public or society. um when I was young and in my teens and early 20s, there wasn't a lot of like s- there weren't a lot of outlets where we could find space and camaraderie and like sisterhood. And if there just weren't people that looked like us, right? So it's really hard to feel like you're alone. And I know I'm not alone, but like at the time I was like, I feel like I'm the only one doing this. And I felt there were Rosie, there were so many times that um I wanted to quit.
Yeah.
There were so many times, and I tell people a lot. I'm like, this was not easy. You guys, see the end result. You guys see the pictures and you guys see the pendant business and you see me traveling in Cambodia and stuff. And like, that's all nice. But like the times that I struggled and the times that I was super depressed and my anxiety was really bad and I was in a really, really bad place, um, I wanted to give up. And um, thankfully I wasn't addicted to drugs. I partied, of course, I think like we all do, but alcoholism wasn't never an issue. I never gambled. I don't want to say aversion, but like there was always a line I never crossed, because I knew if I crossed that line, then the possibility of like my dreams coming true would be that much harder to get to. And so there was always a boundary that I would never cross. But in knowing that, in me being this in this lane by myself, or so I thought, I was like, I feel alone. And going back to the thing about like sharing my story online and hopefully it's going to help other people, I was like, my biggest takeaway is make sure you are the person that the younger version of you would appreciate.
Oh, oh, you
Because
just gave me
all
goosebumps. Yes.
the stuff that I'm doing now, I'm like, would the teenage version of me think I'm cool? Would that young mind of mine be would the 14-year-old version of Sorany look at me now and be like, I think she's so cool. Like she's so smart and she's so, blah blah blah. Like would I make myself proud? And it goes back to that. No one's ever going to be like, okay, now it's time to enjoy your life, and okay, now it's time to like move on to your next adventure. Like no one's going to tell you to do that. all of a sudden, like, we're in the driver's seat. I'm the adult. I'm the one making the decisions. And I'm like, oh, if something doesn't work, like, I can choose to say no. I can
Yes.
choose to say no to this opportunity, or say no to dating this person, or, you know, we can make all these decisions. And I guess what I'm trying to say is like, um, most of the world knows me because of my social media, and I'm so grateful for that. But I want people to understand that it's the work that you do behind the scenes when there's no one around, when there's no one looking. It's when you're working on yourself, your personal development. It's how you meditate and calm your nervous system so that you are better equipped to go out into the world and stand up for yourself when situations arise, when you can negotiate a certain pay for yourself in a job. It's when you can say yes or no to a relationship or a friendship that you do or do not want. Like, those are the things. So it's all the unseen work. And I'm most of the world knows me because of my social media, but I always want to drive home the fact that, like, it's the stuff that you do behind the scenes that are really, really important. And like, yeah, it's fun to take the pictures and travel and like go to the functions and go to the events and know the who's who and whatever. Um, and those are all fun things, but I want to make sure that the visual stuff, like, that's not the goal, right? And especially the background that we come from, there's so much stuff that and speaking for myself, sorry, but like, there was a lot of things that I was longing and searching for to be taught, whether it was from my parents or from the education system or just society at large. I was always searching for something. And once I realized that, I was like, I get to have the fun and figure out what that means for me, that's when I feel like life really started. Um, yeah.
Yeah, it just brought me to this quote of saying that whatever you're seeking is always is also seeking you too.
Hmm.
And it's like how many like for me it's public speaking, right?
Hmm.
I knew that in my heart like I want to speak, but where do I start, right? I had a coach that says start making, do 100 videos. So that's where my speaking video and all that came about is putting out videos. They suck. They suck, but
But you started.
I started, and this
Mhm.
is where I'm at now, but you haven't seen like I did over 100 videos on social media, just talking, doing IG lives, just like improving. There was times where I spoke and started crying and I
Mhm.
stuttered and but it's all learning.
Yeah,
It's all
absolutely.
part of the process. And there's times where I want to quit too. But it's just like, maybe don't quit, just take a break, relax,
Mhm.
come, come to you. Sometimes
Learning when to
take
rest.
yeah, learn to rest and then come back at it.
Yeah.
So, to everyone that's listening here, um, dude, me and Sorany, we believe in you, and we know that you can do
Facts.
whatever it is that you wanna do, and we're here to inspire, we're not here to put anyone down, we're here to uplift because we've been there. We've been there that people, hate on us or, all those things. But you know what? When you are going for your dreams, you're gonna meet people that also are going for their dreams, and
Mhm.
it's such a supportive community. For me, coming to the other side of this is we're all trying, right? We're all in
Yeah.
the battlefield, right?
Yeah.
And when you're in the battlefield, all the audience that's watching are the ones that's talking shit. Boo, boo, right? But
Mhm.
are they in the battlefield with you? No. Whoever's in the battlefield with you, they ain't talking shit because they know how hard it is to go there.
Yeah.
So if you're listening to this, please keep going. Keep, you know, go back and listen to your heart because our heart is our compass. I don't know why I didn't want to say campus. It's our compass.
Mhm.
Believe in that.
Absolutely.
You know, you hear Sorany's story about her overcoming what she's been through and her calling to go to Cambodia. And for me, it's like overcoming the public speaking. And look at it here now. We're collaborating, you know? And that's what it
I
is when
love it.
you come to this next version of yourself. It's not you doing it by yourself. It's collaborating with others. And oh, thank you,
I'm
Sorani.
so proud of you.
I am too. I am too. You are showing us, you know, you. You're being authentically you, not anybody else.
Thank
And that's
you.
what I love about you. And that's why I know that why people follow you, you know, because you're so authentic and real. So keep doing what you do. And you guys come play with us, man. Like take the leap. Who knows? Is there any last words for, you know, people listening right now?
Um, I think we've shared a lot. I don't know, like journey to Cambodia, hustling, saving up money, um, adjusting to life in Cambodia. Let me take a real quick look at because I think I just jotted down some notes. Um,
Yeah. Who has been the biggest influence on your journey so far?
um, there's been so many people, local, young, Khmer entrepreneurs, business people, from a lot of different backgrounds, not just Khmer. Going back to what you were saying about, people figuratively like in the crowd talking smack, because it's easy for someone on the outside who maybe don't know us personally, who don't know me personally. It's easy for someone else to criticize like what I'm doing. Oh, she should have done this, or she should not have posted this, or whatever, right? Um, all of the amazing people that I've met through my journey and living and like starting a business, what I have found is that no one that how do I say this? I don't I don't want to take advice from anyone whose life I don't want to learn from, right?
Yes.
Um, because sometimes, and my family has been supportive. This isn't to insinuate that they haven't, but um, for other people, like sometimes young men and women will write to me and they're like, I want to do this, but my parents are really scared of me traveling abroad. They don't want me to go off to college in another state, or whatever the thing is that they're trying to accomplish, right? And the thing is, like, your parents and your family will give you the most sound advice to keep you safe because their default is to keep you safe. And the background that we have is, our parents came from a genocide. They literally had to leave at a very formative time in their life, late teens, early 20s, 30s. Imagine us, like in our 20s, leaving America, everything that we know, going through a genocide, going to a land where we don't know the culture, the language, blah, 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 and having to start over. I imagine, like, what am I going to tell my kids? Like, how do I teach them how to survive in this environment, or in whatever environment that we immigrate to? And I try to really not place any blame or focus, but I want to remind people, if you have a dream in your heart and a goal in your head, the only person that's going to know all the work that takes to get there is you. So I encourage people to seek out mentors, to start listening to podcasts, reading the books, and just taking action. And every single step that you take, it's going to compound and it's going to, increase your bravery and courage to make it to the next step. And it's hard because we respect our parents and our elders, and there were some people in the community that were like, I really at some point I had to just turn it off, because when people were like, oh, you're moving to Cambodia, like I would never. And I'm like, yeah, okay, good for you. For me, how do I explain that every fiber of my being is telling me to go to Sorany? But young man Isaiah, like that's all I wanted to do. Nobody could tell me it differently. No one could tell me otherwise. And then when you get to that point, when you start accomplishing all these things, you're like, oh, I get it. And it gets easier, you know. I still have a lot of fear, don't get me wrong. I'm still
We
scared
all
to do
have,
certain
yeah.
things. And, the point is like, I guess the point I'm trying to make is the fear never really goes away. You just learn how to live with it and be like, how do I use this energy to my advantage? Right? And um the people that inspire me, like to go back to your question, like, man, I'm so inspired by the youth of Cambodia. And I wanted to talk a little bit more about Sok Khmer, about Cambodia, is there is no other time in history that I could have a firsthand experience of seeing a society build itself up.
Mm.
There is a literal renaissance of Khmer art, fashion, music, entertainment, film, real estate, tourism. Every single industry right now is booming in Cambodia. This isn't to say everything's perfect. It's growing, it's developing, but the feeling and the excitement in Cambodia, I I love it. I love the chaos of the city. I love the traffic. I love the noise. I love the noise that the young people are making. I love the music. Seeing their excitement and their hunger to accomplish something. Like imagine us being born in Cambodia in the 80s. Cambodia is still recovering from war. Like the 80s, early 90s, even up until like the late 90s. Cambodia was still very rough. And in some parts of South Khmer, it's still like that today. But it's starting to turn where um what is it? So before the pandemic, before COVID, Cambodia's GDP, uh gross domestic product, was rising at a steady 7 to 8% each year for I think like 8 years or something. So previous to the pandemic, Cambodia's GDP was going like this.
Mhm.
It was the fastest growing country in the Southeast Asian region. And so economically, this tells you that the country is growing, meaning there's a lot of opportunities. The middle class is getting like bigger. People are getting a little bit more comfortable. They're able to make more money. Tourism is getting better. Safety is getting better. There's more condos and high rises and office buildings going up in Cambodia. There's more, and this is a topic for another time, but there's a lot of foreign investment that's going into Cambodia, right? I could talk about this forever. But um me being in Cambodia is also in part because there is so much potential and there's so much opportunity. And that's also what I'm really excited to share and be a part of. I I realized a long time ago, like, I don't want to be I'm in the driver's seat of my own life and like my own, personal stuff and my business and everything. But in terms of like me being a part of this like Khmer diaspora coming back to like choosing to intentionally come back to Cambodia, I sit back and I play a supportive role to whatever is going on in Cambodia. I don't need to tell them what to do. They're in the driver's seat of pushing the envelope in Cambodia. the young people are learning how to use their voice to shape their shape society in Sorany. And I'm so proud of that. And that is a really, really big thing that inspires me. And this is why I'm so passionate about sharing what's going on in Cambodia, because I'm like, and there's only so much I can do. I wish I could like make a feature film, and that's a goal of mine, but that's what's exciting because I'm so excited to share. I'm like, look, guys, like, look what's happening in Cambodia. There's this cool like festival going on. There's like this new music. There's a new artist. There's like this really amazing painter or poet or, this, it could be the smallest thing, right? And really like one of my big things is like, I want to share those really cool parts of Cambodia because um I want to be careful with my words because I don't want to offend anybody. But in America, we're just, I always got the sense that we're just sustaining a certain culture that we know, but it's like melded with American culture. Absolutely nothing wrong with that. But it could only go so far here, right? And there's a lot of really amazing shakers and movers and things that are happening here in America that are specific to America. But if you take those things and you apply it to Cambodia, sometimes it doesn't work. And so that's why I'm really careful to be like, I don't want to be in Cambodia and tell people and tell young people there what to do because that's not my place. Personally, like I feel like my influence and like what I share, why it resonates so much is because I'm like somewhere in between and I'm both, right? I take the back seat and I play a supportive role. I share what things are happening in Cambodia, and then the people in America are like, "Oh my God, that's so cool. Sorany is going to all these things and it looks safe there. Like I'm so excited to go." Like there, I would say since even, and this is even before I went to Cambodia actually. Um, People have messaged me and they're like, because of you and because of your videos and posts that you make about Cambodia, I felt safe enough to book the ticket to go to Cambodia. Hey, Sorany, I'm taking my mom, at the end of this year on her first trip back to Sorany since she left, after Samayapot. Like that makes me so incredibly happy. And I'm so humbled and I'm so happy because I'm like, now that there's like a tangible difference, like I can there's a quantifiable, impact that I've made. And it's, I mean, visual, right? In a sense, I can see people, but like when they send me those messages, I'm so happy. I'm really, really happy. But in terms of who inspires me, girl, like the youth in Cambodia, they're like making it happen.
Yeah.
And yeah.
I love that because it is the youth that's going to change this world. You guys are going to be the ones uh making the improvement of this world because the society is collapsing and what the old programming does not work. So
Hmm.
it's the youth that's going to come up with the new things that's going to improve and
Hmm.
evolve this human planet.
Yeah,
So,
it's definitely here and abroad,
mhm,
here in America and abroad, in Cambodia and other countries. That's the challenge and the privilege, right? The challenge is, um, you know, unfortunately living through circumstances that like didn't work. And then the opportunity and the privilege is, okay, what knowledge can we use to better improve our lives? Um, there's so much more that we could
yeah.
talk about,
And,
like
and that's
regarding
and
social,
that's
yeah.
where it goes to how do we change this world, right? It starts with you.
Hmm.
Look at your life. What part of your life that's not working? How can we improve that? Right? It's like the self-awareness if you're able to see what's working in your programming or what doesn't.
Hmm.
Um, but it just comes down to like we're always evolving and changing.
Yeah.
And the more you stay stuck to your old programmings, the more you're gonna suffer. And it's learning to like adapt to like this is what life is now. It's
Yeah,
changing.
for
And
sure. And um, to go off what you were saying, like I think now, like I try to we all have our bad days. I have bad days here and there, and I don't ever want to sugarcoat like that part of my life because um I feel like if you're not constantly questioning and updating your beliefs and challenging yourself, then you're not growing, because I never want to get to a place where I'm content and complacent. I understand that a lot of people like that's where they're comfortable at, but for me, I want more because and maybe this is like an issue or maybe this is like a good thing, but I get bored really easily,
yeah,
you know? And so I'm always like I'm always reading something new. I'm always like interested in something else. I'm always like I would rather watch a documentary than any other type of film because I always want to learn. Like in to me, I'm like if I'm not learning about something, I feel like I'm not being useful. This isn't to say that I need to be useful all the time or productive, but like I'm just a curious person by nature. And I think that I think that updating our beliefs and constantly challenging ourselves is really what makes life interesting. Um, and I could talk about this forever.
yeah.
Um, what else was I gonna say? Like going back to like the intergenerational stuff, that's always a very prominent subject and issue within our communities because I think our challenge for like women and other people our age is how can we use the best of the things that we've learned and apply them to the kind of life that we want? Um, Taking advice from people that we can learn from, um, the people who have not experienced or have not gone through, certain kinds of things. Like an entrepreneur is never going to look down on you and be like, don't take that risk or don't like make this decision. No one's ever gonna, certain kinds of people are never gonna put you down, right? And in terms of like constructive criticism, I have gotten a lot. I have gotten my fair share. And I always want to, I've learned as I've gotten older, like if someone gives me some criticism, I used to be very like reactive and be like, no, I'm not. And I would be really argumentative. And now that I've gotten older, I'm like, okay, I try to take a step back and be like, if it bothers me, why does it bother me? Why am I so reactive? Is there something I can learn? If there is something I can learn, then I'll figure that out. But if it's just coming from a place of like hate and vitriol and just like being petty, then of course, no. But we have to get to a point where we can differentiate like, is someone really trying to like share and impart knowledge on me, or is it just coming from a place of like jealousy? Because I've had a lot of that too. And I think with the wisdom of experience and getting older and being in like diverse places, um that's like another one of my big like pieces of advice as well. um the way the way that you become sure of yourself is to go through the situation and not like avoid it. Um, yeah,
Yeah. Whew. Life is life is like a box of chocolate. You don't know what you're gonna get.
absolutely.
No. Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Sarani, for joining me
Thank
on this
you.
podcast today and the wisdom that you share about your journey, about overcoming what you had to overcome. And oh, there's so much. There's so much in this conversation today. It was so beautiful to talk to you. And this is
Thank you.
me and Sarani's first time ever uh, chatting,
Yeah, isn't that
via
crazy?
Zoom. Yeah. And the reason It's like we're on this playing field, and it's you get to choose. You get to choose your life. And I know that whatever you choose, if you believe it in your heart that you can do it, do it. Go for it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So thank you so much, Sorany, for joining us. And
Thank you
thank you
for
guys for
having
tuning
me.
in. And this is Sorany. And I will leave all her details in the description below us. And then you can contact her, subscribe, follow. Do you have a YouTube channel or no?
I do not have an active YouTube channel. You can find me on Instagram at Sorany V, SORANY_V. And then my business is Soveda. By the time this um, podcast video is going to be up, people will be able to visit my business site, which is soveda.com, SOVEDAA.com, and they can check out my Buddha pendants. And yeah,
Yeah. And I love it.
thank you.
I'm glad that you have like so many different types of Buddha pendants, and they're beautiful.
Thank you.
And now we have a source that we can get it from.
Yeah, there's definitely other people, but I try to focus on Khmer style Buddha pendants that are carved or at least mounted in Cambodia, and then I provide that to customers in the US. Hopefully in the future I'll be able to provide worldwide shipping. I will get there at some point, I promise. But yeah, that's what I do.
Yay! Well, thank you so much. And you
Thank
guys
you.
check her out. I'll leave the description below. And dude, have a great day.
Thank you. Bye.